So how did you? What's your background in Judaism? Like where did you get into this and how you got to where you're doing? Because if I'm understanding correctly, you are Orthodox at the end of the
I
day.
am Orthodox,
You're
and
just
I'm also a
controversial.
convert. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually a convert to Judaism. I converted around 25 years ago. Before converting, I was a Christian for a short amount of time, but I went to seminary as a Christian. I went to Jacksonville Baptist Theological Seminary. I actually graduated from there. And when I was in the military, that's when my eyes were open to Judaism. I was stationed in Fort Bragg, and the rabbi in Fort Bragg back then was Rabbi Horowitz, famous rabbi, did a whole study on the Hanging Gardens of King Nebuchadnezzar when he was in Iraq, and he gave me my first Jewish experience, and I never stopped. I looked into it. I came to the conclusion that Jesus wasn't God or the Messiah, and I felt, where do I go from here? And when I went back home, I grew up in Miami Beach, so like, I've always been surrounded by Jews and Jewish culture. So I ended up going to my local synagogue and just telling them I want to convert. After around 3 years, I converted, and I moved to Israel. I learned in Aish Torah in the Old City. I learned a little North Sameach and other yeshivas, and I never stopped from there. I think my philosophical approach in Judaism, I adopted more from Timanim in Eretz Yisrael. In terms of what I actually learned in yeshiva, I don't think it's extraordinary. However, living in Israel, I got a taste of different cultures. I mean, specifically the Yemenite perspective on understanding halacha, which is based a lot on the Rambam, and a systematic theology that I think most streams in Orthodoxy are lacking. I think most people just trust anyone with a long beard and a black hat. While I think Yemenites, based on Maimonides, wanted to make it make sense to some extent. And this is what Maimonides brought to the mix. This is why he's so popular in the religious Jewish world, that he
Mhm.
actually tried to break it down in some reasonable manner.
The funny thing about the Rambam is that he also was not hesitant to debunk the idea that the words of a rabbi are not ordained by heaven, meaning it's
Mhm.
just a person talking, and you can use your rationality as much as they can use their rationality, and you should obviously be respectful and respect tradition and not make things up, but you can use your rationality to understand these concepts. Um, so the question is then, what is so controversial? You're an Orthodox Jew, you're a
Mhm.
convert, you're a rabbi. What is so controversial about Asher Meza that Tuvia Singer thinks you're from the pits of hell or something like that?
So I believe in proselytizing. I believe that
So does he.
yeah, right, right. But I believe in proselytizing people not based off of DNA or pedigree or yichus. So yes, it's true. The average Jew proselytizes, but they proselytize based off of pedigree. They think that if you happen to have a Jewish mother, that means that you're in some way redeemable, and if you don't, you're irredeemable. And Kabbalah has gone even further and says that if you end up converting, it's because you always had a Jewish soul. That means the Torah itself is not impressive enough to draw you to itself. It's always tied to blood. And I think the idea that blood matters is the last primitive belief that we have to do away with. And this is what they don't like. Now, there's nothing in Jewish law that prohibits proselytizing, right? And proselytizing doesn't mean going door to door telling people you have to become Jewish. On my show, I always have a banner saying that Judaism might be for you, it might not be for you, but just having that open door policy and letting people know that if you're looking for an ethical outlet in life, you may want to consider Judaism. They hate that. They hate that because it's a Kabbalistic principle, Esav Lasona Yaakov, that Gentiles will intrinsically hate us and they are the enemy. And I'll talk about this later. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So the fact is though that there's a biblical injunction to love the convert and treat them with respect. So how do they justify demonizing what you're doing when people, let's say, not to their standard, but people come
Uh,
into being in the covenant of Israel, let's say?
So they really believe that converts don't exist. They believe that if someone ends up converting, Alpi Kabbalah, is that they were always Jewish to begin with. They're just the reincarnation of a dead Jewish person coming back. So this is why converts are mistreated today, because they have to put them to the ringer to make sure that they truly have a Jewish soul, Pintele Yid, Yiddish Akap, all of the above. And it's this corrosive Kabbalistic ideology that has us so small and ethically, socially irrelevant in this world.
So it's interesting. I don't know if you have you ever studied anything about late 19th century Theosophy. You know what that is?
I don't know.
So there was a lady by the name of Helena Blavatsky, who traveled to India and picked up some Eastern philosophy and picked up some Kabbalah and picked up some of this and Christian mysticism and all these different things. And when in a whole big act of syncretism created something called the Theosophical Society. Um, and so she was very into spirituality, but she divided people into spiritual classes. And the white European, according to her, was more spiritually evolved, and she equated it to something about Atlantis or something like that, some nonsense, right?
Mhm.
But this was actually picked up by as a justification because he was an occultist. Like, people think Hitler was a Christian. He said he was a Christian because his nation was a Christian nation, but he was an occultist, like objectively so. And he picked up Theosophy and like he had met Helena Blavatsky, I think, and picked up these ideas about spiritual evolution and based his ideas on that to a large extent. And so this idea that a soul that you're born with could dictate your spiritual attunement and how important you are in the eyes of the creator seems to be very, like, the Zohar is very ethnocentric. That is true for sure. I was watching a video of a guy discussing the Zohar. He's very into Kabbalah, very educated. I disagree with him on whether or not it's true, but he does present a very good explanation of what the Zohar is. And he skates over that one part about, yeah, it's ethnocentric, but really it means humanity. When it says the Jew, it just means humanity. It's a very ethnocentric document, and that's been a justification for some of the worst atrocities in human history. And it's bothersome to me that my fellow Jews see people that way, and they say it, excuse me, on the street or on a video or presenting an idea to a public event. They'll say, no, we're very open and we're very accepting of people and we want to have good interfaith relationships. But at the table at shul, a different story is being told.
The Zohar essentially invented, or I guess really made popular, the idea of a Jewish soul. According to the Talmud, according to the Torah, Jews and Gentiles have the same souls. It's what you do with it. And then the Hasidic movement, built off the Arizal, solidified it in the Jewish world. The notion of chelek elokah mimal mamish, that the soul of every Jew is actually connected, is actually, like a chelek of Hashem, a piece of God, mamash. Actually, it says that the souls of Gentiles come from the Sitra Achra, from the unclean klipas, that they're in some way on the level of an animal, and everything that Gentiles do, they do for egotistical reasons. This is the bedrock of Kabbalistic thought that doesn't even appear in the Talmud. There's some off-color statements in the Talmud, okay, but it doesn't become solidified till the Arizal comes in the scene, and the Arizal is built off of the Zohar. And this is why people who are not big fans of the Zohar limit their understanding of halacha to what the Rambam wrote, because the Rambam was a codifier before the Zohar was in our, as a rationalist, we believe was written, which is 1270 of the Common Era by Moses de Leon in Spain.
Right.
So it's only a corrosive idea. I'll stand behind the Talmud, as in, by the way, like, I denounce any abrasive,
Well, I have a whole
off-color
video on
statement
the
that's